Respected our beloved President and Chairperson of today's program, of this organizer of this program, Professor A.K. Ajad Khan sir, our respected Secretary General, Mr. Muhammad Saifuddin sir, and the moderator of this session. Not only this session, the total program is moderated by excellently by Dr. Faria Afsana, one of our colleagues from Department of Endocrinology. And today's this session will be speaker is Dr. Ahmed Salam Mir, one of my beloved student and student of Bardem Academy, and he is an endocrinologist working as associate professor of endocrinology in Bangladesh Institute of Health Science. And he will be talking on management and update of diabetic neuropathy, one of the important, sometimes underdiagnosed and undertreated event, and but very important events which can save many of the patients' life as well as food and many complications from the diabetes and of course from the diabetic neuropathy. Without further delay, I will invite all the participants from home and abroad in this BADA's virtual conference of 2020, and I must thank the organizer for giving me or selecting me as the chair of this session. And in this COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, in a global pandemic, including Bangladesh, we have lost many of our doctors and healthcare professionals and other personalities, dignitaries, including the general people of Bangladesh. I pay my homage and respect to those who have to the departed soul and pray for early recovery those who are suffering and pray for those who will stay safe, those who are not yet affected. And today is 6th September, as we have already seen. Today is our Sheba Divas and death anniversary of Professor Muhammad Ibrahim, my beloved and my one of the mentor as well as my idol, of course, and like me, many of our teachers' idol of is Professor Muhammad Ibrahim. He was not only a professor or national professor, he was a philosopher, he was a visionary, and you have already seen from the last couple of minutes from his documentary on his biography. So, with due respect to him and with due respect to the participants, I like to start the session without further delay. The mic is handed over to the speaker, Dr. Ahmed Salam Mir, please.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Respected chairperson of the session, Professor S.M. Ashrafuzzaman sir, President of Bangladesh Diabetic Association, Professor A.K. Ajad Khan sir, and Secretary General, Mr. Mohammad Saifuddin sir, and respected moderators and panelists, Professor M.A. Rashid sir and Professor Brigadier General Mohammad Abdul Muhid Bhia sir. The moderator, my respected senior, Dr. Faria Afsana Appa, and all the participants. Assalamu alaikum again, and welcome you all to our present topic. Today I am going to present a short presentation on diabetic neuropathy. As Professor Ashrafuzzaman sir has already said that diabetic neuropathy, it is a less discussed topic in the part of management of diabetes. I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, you are visible and audible, but you may increase a little bit your sound louder. Dr. Ahmed.
Yes. I think now it is louder.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So, updates in the management of diabetic neuropathy, and I am Dr. Ahmed Salam Mir from Department of Endocrinology, Bangladesh Institute of Health Sciences. So, what is diabetic neuropathy? We can think of a male in his 30s who is suffering from diabetes for the last 10 years. And when he comes home at night and he lies down in the bed, and there is very much burning and tingling sensation in his feet. That's why he cannot sleep adequately in the night, and so he becomes a bit irritable, and there is quarrels in the family, and also he is depressed in the workplace also, and he becomes agitated. So diabetic neuropathy is not only a medical condition, actually it hampers the day-to-day life, although it is less discussed, but it affects the quality of life very badly of the diabetic patients by affecting the peripheral nerves of diabetic patients. So diabetic neuropathies are the most prevalent chronic complications of diabetes, and it's a heterogeneous group of conditions affecting different parts of the nervous system and presents with diverse clinical manifestations. Diabetic neuropathy is important. Why should we actually diagnose it? Because many will say that why should we diagnose diabetic neuropathy? There is no definite treatment for it. You can reverse it. So what is the use of diagnosis? Actually, diabetic neuropathy is a diagnosis of exclusion. Any patient with diabetes presenting with the features of neuropathy is not diabetic neuropathy. We should exclude other causes of neuropathies because the non-diabetic neuropathies may be present and which may be treatable by specific measures. And even if it is symptomatic diabetic neuropathy, due to the presence of different treatment options nowadays, we can use those treatment options for alleviation of the symptoms. Many of the diabetic peripheral neuropathies may be asymptomatic, but if they are not recognized early and preventive foot care is not implemented, there is risk of development of diabetic foot. And recognition and treatment of autonomic neuropathy may improve symptoms and reduce sequelae and improve the quality of life also. Therefore, screening for symptoms and signs of diabetic neuropathy is critical in clinical practice. It may detect the earliest stages of neuropathy and enabling early intervention. The most common forms of diabetic peripheral neuropathy is distal symmetrical peripheral neuropathy, and autonomic neuropathy is also an important form of diabetic neuropathy. So, the strongest available evidence regarding treatment pertains to those forms. What is the pathogenesis? As far as we can summarize, when there is hyperglycemia, there is increased glucose and there is protein oxidation, and due to dyslipidemia, there is also lipid oxidation. So there is increased inflammatory signals. Due to glycolysis defects, there is also reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species, which pertains to the DNA damage and endoplasmic reticulum stress. There is mitochondrial dysfunction and cellular injury and irreversible damage ultimately. Again, due to lipid oxidation, there is production of free fatty acid and cholesterol. From cholesterol, there is oxysterols, which may also predispose to the cellular injury and damage. And due to decreased insulin and C-peptide, there is a defect in insulin signaling, which also pertains to this neuropathy. We can classify the diabetic neuropathies into two types. Number one, the originally which are diabetic neuropathies. These are diffuse neuropathies like distal sensorimotor symmetrical polyneuropathy and autonomic neuropathy. Again, mononeuropathy and mononeuritis multiplex with atypical forms, and radiculopathy or polyradiculopathy with atypical forms. But there are some non-diabetic neuropathies common in diabetes like pressure pulses, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, that is CIDP, radiculoplexus neuropathy including the plexopathies, and acute painful small fiber neuropathies, which may be also treatment induced. That distal symmetrical polyneuropathy may be divided again in primary small fiber or primary large fiber neuropathy, but most are mixed small and large fiber neuropathies. In case of autonomic neuropathy, there are cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, urogenital, and pseudomotor neuropathies, and there is also hypoglycemia, unawareness, and abnormal pupillary function. The most common is cardiovascular neuropathy, like reduced heart rate variability, resting tachycardia, orthostatic hypotension, sudden death, including malignant arrhythmia. And the GI disturbances include the gastroparesis, diabetic enteropathy, that is the diabetic diarrhea, and colonic hypomotility, which causes constipation. Now, regarding the mononeuropathy, that is the mononeuritis multiplex, and there may be isolated cranial or peripheral nerve like cranial nerve 3 or ulnar or medial or femoral nerve pulses. Again, there may be mononeuritis multiplex. If it is concrete, it may resemble the polyneuropathies. The radiculopathies or polyradiculopathies may present as radiculoplexus neuropathy, like lumbosacral polyradiculopathy or proximal motor amyotrophy, and they may also present as thoracic radiculopathy. Here is a schematic drawing of different clinical patterns of diabetic neuropathy. In the distal symmetrical polyneuropathy, like the far left figure A, there is presentation with globes and stockings pattern of sensory disturbances and also some motor disturbances. In case of radiculoplexus neuropathy, there is a bizarre presentation because there is involvement of roots and plexuses. But if there is compressive focal neuropathies, the distribution is in the peripheral nerve distribution, like the sural nerve or the common peroneal nerve, etc., or the median nerve, etc. And the autonomic neuropathy, it actually involves the different parts of the autonomic function, like the cardiac or gastrointestinal, as we have already seen. So, as the most common type is distal sensory polyneuropathy, we are going to discuss a short about it. It is the most common among diabetic neuropathies and accounting for about 75% of the diabetic neuropathies. A simple definition of DSPN for clinical practice is the presence of symptoms or signs of peripheral nerve dysfunction in people with diabetes after the exclusion of other causes. Most of the evidences suggest that DSPN occurs in at least 20% of people with type 1 diabetes after 20 years of disease duration, and it may be present in at least 10 to 15% of newly diagnosed patients with type 2 diabetes, with rates increasing to 50% after 10 years of disease duration. And DSPN, especially the painful small fiber neuropathy, may be present even in subjects with impaired glucose tolerance. That is, even before developing diabetes, these patients may develop neuropathy. It's also a major contributor to falls and fractures through more advanced small and large fiber dysfunction with loss of sensory proprioception and temperature discrimination, ultimately leading to unsteadiness, recurrent minor injuries, and increased risk of falls. So, what are the symptoms and signs of this DSPN? Two types of nerve fibers may be involved, like large myelinated nerve fibers and small nerve fibers. The large nerve fibers, they actually are responsible for the pressure and balance sensation, whereas the small fibers are responsible for the nociception, that's the pain sensation, and protective sensations like temperature sensation. So due to damage of the large nerve fibers, there is numbness, tingling, and poor balance, and due to damage of the small fibers, due to damage of the small nerve fibers, there may be pain, burning sensation, electric shock-like sensation, and stabbing sensations. If we examine the patient, in case of the large fiber damage, we can find out the ankle reflexes may be reduced or absent, vibration sense may be reduced, and the examination with monofilament, it may be reduced or absent, and also there is lack of proprioception. The small fibers may affect the thermal discrimination and pinprick sensation. I would request everyone except the moderator and chairperson to mute themselves. So, how to screen and how to diagnose this DSPN? All patients should be assessed for distal polyneuropathy starting at the diagnosis and 5 years thereafter in case of type 1 diabetes, and annually in case of type 2 diabetes. Even if the pre-diabetes patient, if they have the symptoms of peripheral neuropathy, we may consider screening them for the presence of peripheral neuropathy, because we know already that. Yes, you can. May I request everyone to mute yourself, please?
Please, Ahmed, continue, please.
Assessment should include a careful history and either temperature or pinprick sensation and vibration sensation using a 128 Hz tuning fork for large fiber function. And all patients should have an annual 10 gram monofilament testing to assess for feet at risk for ulceration and amputation.
ওদের থেকে করাই ভালো।
Electrophysiological testing or referral to neurologist is usually not needed except in situations where the clinical features are atypical or the diagnosis is unclear. Like a different etiology like CIDP is suspected. In those cases, we can go for electrophysiological testing like nerve conduction study, etc. There may be some atypical features like motor greater than sensory neuropathy, rapid onset, or asymmetrical presentation. In these cases, we should also go for the electrophysiological testing for the differential diagnosis exclusion. The clinical examinations should include the pinprick and temperature sensation for the small fiber function and vibration and proprioception for the large fiber function, and also the Sims-Winston nylon monofilament test and ankle jerk. This is a 3-minute diabetic foot exam which is prepared for the diabetic patients for exclusion of neuropathy and also the exclusion of risk of diabetic foot. In the first minute, we can ask the patient for previous foot ulcer, for prior angioplasty, foot wound, or smoking or nicotine use. If there is burning or tingling sensation in the foot, or if there is foot pain on activity, or in the change in skin color. In the second minute, we examine the patient. We should look for the dermatological manifestations like elongated nails or ingrown nails, signs of fungal infection, any hypertrophic skin lesion, or if there is fissures or cracks, etc. For neurological exam, we can use at least light touch in the feet. For musculoskeletal exam, we should look for the full range of motion, if there is any obvious deformities or if there is inflammation of the mid-foot joints, and we should look for the peripheral pulses. Then in the third minute, we can teach the patient to visually examine the both feet and keep the feet dry and report any new lesions, and education regarding the shoes and overall health risk management. This is a format for 3-minute diabetic foot exam for all the diabetic patients. We can use it in the our busy chambers or outdoors, or also in the indoors for regular screening. And when to refer a patient to a specialist, when urgently, sometimes we should refer the patient with a high risk like presence of diabetes with a previous history of ulcer or chronic venous insufficiency. But if there is an open wound or ulcerative area or new neuropathic pain, if there is sharp cut foot or vascular compromise, we should refer the patient very urgently. This is a picture of a patient undergoing a nerve conduction study of the median nerve in the upper limb, and here is a picture for the quantitative sensory assessment. Now comes the point, how to manage these patients. Number one is the diet glucose control, targeting near normal glycemia in patients with type 1 diabetes and also in type 2 diabetes. Also, we should look for the other risk factor managements, and other comorbidities should be managed also. Lifestyle interventions are recommended. Pain management, the first agent, as we already know, that pregabalin or duloxetine is the initial approach in the symptomatic treatment for neuropathic pain. In few patients, we may also use gabapentin, but we should keep in mind the side effects of gabapentin. Pregabalin is better tolerated. Next comes the tricyclic antidepressants, which are also effective for the neuropathic pain, but should be used with caution given the high risk of serious side effects. Tramadol or tapentadol, these are very seldom used, and in our country tapentadol has been already banned by the government, so we cannot use tapentadol because there is high risk of addiction and substance misuse. Most of the agents require very high doses like pregabalin 150 to 600 milligram per day, gabapentin 1800 to 3600 milligram per day. Duloxetine may be needed up to 60 to 120 milligram per day, and amitriptyline or non-triptyline may be used up to 100 milligrams per day with dose titration. So, if we go for a flowchart, Is the pain due to DSPN confirmed? If it is sure, then we should assess the comorbidities and drug interactions and cost to select initial therapy from the three choices. Number one, the pregabalin or gabapentin. Number two is the duloxetine or venlafaxine. Number three is the nortriptyline or desipramine. If there is no clinically meaningful effect, we can use to switch to another agent or try combining agents from above. And if we cannot use those cases, then we can go to tramadol or tapentadol. And if still after using 2 or 3 agents there is no clinically meaningful effect, then we can refer the patient to pain clinic. Fall prevention is very important, and we should assess the patient's gait and balance in people with DSPN to evaluate the risk of falls. And we should also consider treatment with duloxetine and pregabalin to improve quality of life with neuropathic pain for the psychosocial factors. Now, some words about the diabetic autonomic neuropathies. Cardiac autonomic neuropathy may present with lightheadedness, weakness, faintness, palpitations, and syncope, and most of these symptoms occur upon standing from sitting or lying position. There are some clinical signs like reduced heart rate variability, resting tachycardia that is more than 100 beats per minute, exercise intolerance, orthostatic hypotension like a fall in systolic or diastolic blood pressure of more than 20 or more than 10 millimeter mercury respectively upon standing. The diagnosis depends on the documented symptoms and signs. ECG recordings with deep breathing may be considered, and we should also exclude the differentials like anemia, hyperthyroidism, dehydration, adrenal insufficiency, and most importantly, the medications, including the diuretic drugs. GI disturbances may present with early satiety, fullness and bloating, nausea, vomiting or dyspepsia and abdominal pain in case of gastroparesis. In case of esophageal dysfunction, there is heartburn and dysphagia to solids, and also there may be diabetic diarrhea. Clinically, in the majority of cases, the cases are silent. Glucose variability and unexplained hypoglycemia may occur in case of gastroparesis patients. For diagnosis, we should take the medication history very carefully, and esophageogastroduodenoscopy or barium study may exclude the organic causes of gastric outlet obstruction, and scintigraphy of digestible solids are gold standard for if the above tests are negative. And nowadays the 13-carbon octanoic acid breath test has emerged as an easier alternative, but most of the cases are diagnosed clinically. Urogenital autonomic neuropathies may be there with bladder dysfunction, with male sexual dysfunction like erectile dysfunction, decreased libido and abnormal ejaculation, and also the female sexual dysfunction like decreased desire, increased pain and decreased arousal, and also inadequate lubrications. Pseudomotor disturbances may present with gustatory sweating and anhidrosis. So what will be the management of autonomic neuropathy? Number one is prevention. Again, glucose control for both types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. And lifestyle modifications are also effective treatment strategies in case of IGT or metabolic syndrome patients, and also in type 2 diabetes patients. For orthostatic hypotension, physical activity and volume repletion with fluids are important.
Hello.
The pharmacological agents like midodrine may be used, and droxidopa also may be used, but unfortunately in our countries they are usually not available, so we cannot use this. For gastroparesis, dietary changes like eating multiple small meals, decreasing fat and fiber intake, and withdrawing drugs with effects on motility like opioids, anticholinergic and tricyclic antidepressants are important. GLP receptor agonists may cause GI upset, and pramlintide may also cause GI upset, so this should be avoided. In some cases, metformin also needs to be avoided for the gastroparesis symptom improvement. Metoclopramide, previously it was widely available in our country, now it is less used. It may be used as a prokinetic agent, and also there is some risk of adverse effects including the tardive dyskinesia. So we are at the end of the presentation. If we summarize that diabetic neuropathy is an important complications of diabetes, and it should be addressed and examined accordingly in every diabetic patient. At least in every visit, we should ask the patient for the symptoms of diabetic neuropathy, and we should examine at least annually with the 3-minute diabetic foot test to prevent the diabetic foot in those patients. And in the patient with symptoms, we should try to alleviate those symptoms by number one, by the tight control of blood sugar, and number two, by the symptomatic treatments without causing much side effect by the drugs. That may improve the symptoms of our patient, and that may improve the quality of life to ensure a good sleep at the night. Here we can see that the patient is sleeping at night when there is no burning sensation in the feet, no tingling, and the patient is very happy. The quality of life has improved. Thank you for patient hearing.
After the